was a cold, cloudy evening in the bustling city of Grey Rock. 13-year-old Ethan had just finished his late shift helping at a corner bookstore. With worn-out sneakers and a backpack filled with unsold books, he began his long walk home, through the dimly lit streets. Though his neighborhood was rough, Ethan knew every shortcut and alley by heart. Unbeknownst to him, just 2 blocks away, a luxury car had broken down. Inside was Mr. Henry Whitmore, a reclusive millionaire known for his sharp business mind but distant personality. He had taken a rare trip alone that day without his driver. As fate would have it, the 2 lives, one of struggle and one of privilege, were about to collide. Ethan turned a corner and noticed the sleek black car, its engine sputtering and lights dim. He paused, sensing something wasn't right. 3 shadowy figures crept toward the vehicle, their faces partially hidden, movements tense. Ethan's heart pounded. He ducked behind a trash bin, watching as the men closed in. He didn't know who was in the car, but he knew trouble when he saw it. Ethan crouched behind the trash bin, peeking through a small gap. The 3 men were now right next to the car. One tapped on the window with the barrel of a handgun while the others scanned the area. Mr. Whitmore, frozen in shock, slowly raised his hands inside the car. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but something stronger held him there. He couldn't let this happen, not even to a stranger. His mother always said, "Real bravery isn't about being strong. It's about doing what's right when no one else will." Looking around, Ethan spotted a loose brick by his foot. Quietly, he picked it up. He took a deep breath, then hurled with all his strength at the car across the alley. The brick shattered a window, setting off a deafening car alarm. The robbers spun around in confusion. One shouted, "Who's there?" Guns now raised, they pointed toward the sound, leaving Mr. Whitmore momentarily forgotten. Ethan ducked low and sprinted behind a dumpster, heart pounding in his chest. The alarm echoed through the alley. Lights from nearby apartments flicked on. The robbers hesitated. Too much noise, too much attention. One hissed, "Let's get out of here." They disappeared into the darkness. Ethan, still hidden, waited until the coast was clear. Mr. Whitmore slowly opened his car door, shaken but unharmed. His eyes scanned the shadows. Who did that?" he murmured. Mr. Whitmore stepped out of the car, his hands still trembling. The alley was now eerily quiet except for the fading echo of the alarm. He scanned the shadows, trying to catch a glimpse of the person who saved him. Nothing but darkness. Ethan peeked out from behind the dumpster, making sure the robbers were truly gone. His heart was still racing, but a strange sense of pride was blooming in his chest. He had done something no one else dared to do. He considered walking away without being seen, but then he noticed Mr. Whitmore stumbling slightly, clearly shaken. Against his better judgment, Ethan stepped out slowly. "Are you okay, sir?" he asked cautiously, his voice low. Mr. Whitmore turned sharply, startled. He saw a skinny boy standing at the edge of the alley, hands raised in peace, wearing a hoodie and scuffed shoes. Was that you?" Mr. Whitmore asked. Ethan shrugged. "I just saw what was happening and I couldn't ignore it." Mr. Whitmore was stunned. "You're just a kid. Doesn't mean I can't help." There was silence between them for a moment. One from the world of wealth, the other from struggle. 2 very different lives suddenly connected by an act of courage. "What's your name, son?" Mr. Whitmore asked softly. "Ethan," he replied. "Ethan Cole." The older man gave a small nod. "Thank you, Ethan. You may have just saved my life." Mr. Whitmore leaned against his car, still catching his breath. The boy, Ethan, stood awkwardly nearby, unsure whether to leave or stay. It was clear that neither of them knew exactly what to say next. "You could have just kept walking," Mr. Whitmore said after a pause. "You could have ignored it. Most people would." Ethan gave a half smile. "Most people aren't me." Mr. Whitmore chuckled, then suddenly winced, clutching his side. "I think one of them hit me. Nothing serious, but I might have a bruise." Without hesitation, Ethan stepped forward. "You need to get somewhere safe. This isn't the best area to stay parked." Mr. Whitmore nodded. I was on my way home when the car broke down. Battery's dead. Ethan glanced at his watch. I know a mechanic down on Brighton Street. He owes my mom a favor. I can call him. You're resourceful, Mr. Whitmore said, impressed. Tell you what, can I offer you a ride home? Or maybe dinner? Ethan hesitated. He hadn't had a proper meal in 2 days. I don't want anything in return. I just did what felt right. Mr. Whitmore smiled. Then let me do what feels right too. Ethan finally nodded. All right, but just dinner. As they walked out of the alley together, the millionaire placed a protective hand on Ethan's shoulder. A quiet bond was beginning to form, one neither of them fully understood yet. Mr. Whitmore guided Ethan to a nearby cafe that stayed open late, one of those quiet upscale places with velvet curtains and soft jazz playing in the background. It wasn't the kind of place a boy like Ethan ever imagined stepping into. Heads turned as the well-dressed millionaire and the boy in the hoodie entered together. The waiter, confused but polite, led them to a private corner booth. Mr. Whitmore ordered a steak and a salad. Ethan, after some persuasion, ordered a burger and fries. As they waited for the food, Ethan looked around the elegant dining room with wide eyes. "This place is fancy," he said quietly. Mr. Whitmore chuckled. "It's calm, safe. I come here when I need to think." Ethan nodded, fiddling with a paper napkin. "I usually just go to the bookstore. Helps me forget things for a while." "You work there?" "After school, they let me take home books too." Mr. Whitmore studied the boy with growing interest. "How old are you, Ethan?" 13. "My mom and little sister are at home. We've had a rough year." "I see," said Mr. Whitmore, his voice soft. "You know, I've met powerful men who freeze in moments of danger. But tonight, a 13-year-old risked his life to help a stranger. That means something." Ethan looked down, a bit embarrassed. "I didn't think. I just did it." "Exactly," Mr. Whitmore said. "That's what makes it brave." The food arrived, steaming and rich with aroma. Ethan took his first bite, his eyes lighting up. Mr. Whitmore smiled, not because of the meal, but because of the boy's honesty and strength. It was the beginning of a bond that would soon change both their lives. Image prompt, 16.9 format. A dimly lit, elegant restaurant interior at night. A young boy in a hoodie sits across from a well-dressed older man in a private booth. Plates of food sit between them. Steak for one, burger and fries for the other. The mood is calm and warm, with golden lighting, subtle reflections on glassware, and quiet companionship forming across the table. As the night deepened, the cafe emptied out. Only a few patrons remained, sipping coffee or lost in their own conversations. But at the back booth, a quiet dialogue was unfolding, one that neither Ethan nor Mr. Whitmore had expected when their night began. "So," Mr. Whitmore said, sipping his coffee, "tell me more about your family." Ethan leaned back. "My mom works 2 jobs, sometimes 3. She used to be a nurse, but after my dad passed, she couldn't afford her license renewal." Mr. Whitmore nodded slowly. "And your sister?" "Emma. She's 8. She's got asthma. We try to keep her warm during the winters, but the heat got cut off last month." A wave of silence passed between them. Mr. Whitmore was used to numbers, deals, stocks, but not this kind of quiet suffering. It struck him deeply. "You're incredibly mature for your age," he said after a moment. "I had to grow up fast," Ethan replied. Mr. Whitmore looked at the boy and felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't pity, it was respect, admiration, maybe even a sense of responsibility. "You ever think about what you want to be?" he asked. "A writer," Ethan said without hesitation. "I like stories, real ones. The kind no one tells because they're not shiny enough." Mr. Whitmore smiled, but it faded into something more thoughtful. "Real stories are the only ones that last, Ethan." The boy looked up. "What's your story, Mr. Whitmore?" There was a pause. "I'm not sure anyone's ever asked me that," he said quietly. Mr. Whitmore stirred the last of his coffee as he stared out the cafe window. the city lights dancing across his tired eyes. Ethan waited patiently, sensing that something important was about to be said. "My story," Mr. Whitmore finally began, "started a lot like yours, actually. Grew up in a rough neighborhood, raised by a single mother. Only difference was there was no one like you to step in when things went wrong." Ethan leaned in, surprised. "You weren't always rich?" Mr. Whitmore chuckled, but it was hollow. "Far from it. I started with nothing, worked my way up, made money, lost it, made it again. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it was like to be hungry, to be scared, to be human." Ethan looked at him, trying to understand. "So why are you always alone?" The question hit deeper than expected. Mr. Whitmore looked down at his hands. "I pushed everyone away. I thought success would fill the spaces left behind. It didn't. Money's loud, Ethan. It drowns out the things that matter if you let it." Ethan sat silently, absorbing every word. "You reminded me tonight," Mr. Whitmore continued, "what it means to act without expecting something in return. That kind of bravery. I haven't seen that in years." Ethan's face flushed slightly, unsure how to respond. "I guess. I just didn't want someone to get hurt. That simple truth is worth more than any business deal I've ever made," the millionaire said, his voice low and sincere. The cafe's lights dimmed slightly. Closing time. Mr. Whitmore checked his watch and sighed. "It's almost 1 a.m. Let me take you home, Ethan. You shouldn't be walking these streets this late." Ethan hesitated. "It's a long walk anyway, but your car's still dead." Mr. Whitmore smirked and pulled out his phone. "Not anymore." He tapped the screen, and within minutes, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside the cafe. His backup driver had arrived. As they stepped into the luxurious vehicle, Ethan looked around in awe. The soft leather seats, the glowing dashboard, the quiet hum of comfort. He had never been inside anything like it. The car rolled through the sleeping city. Skyscrapers glistened in the moonlight as they passed closed shops and silent crosswalks. It was strange, peaceful even. But as the car neared Ethan's neighborhood, the contrast became sharp. Broken streetlights, graffiti, potholes, and narrow alleys. "This is it," Ethan said, pointing to a rundown apartment building with peeling paint and broken windows. Mr. Whitmore's face shifted. "You live here?" "Top floor. No elevator. We use candles when the power goes out." The driver parked quietly. Mr. Whitmore placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder before he left. "Tomorrow," he said firmly. "Meet me downtown, 9 a.m. sharp. I want to show you something." Ethan raised a brow. "What?" "A glimpse of a future that could be yours." Ethan smiled faintly, unsure but curious. "Okay, I'll be there." He stepped out of the car and climbed the stairs into the dark. Mr. Whitmore watched until the light in the window flickered on. Candlelight, soft and flickering in the night. Morning light crept through the cracks in Ethan's bedroom wall. He hadn't slept much, tossing and turning with a strange mix of excitement and nerves. Mr. Whitmore's words echoed in his mind. A glimpse of a future that could be yours. By 8:30 a.m., Ethan had washed up, combed his hair, and put on the cleanest clothes he had. Faded jeans, a plain t-shirt, and his old hoodie. He scribbled a note for his mom, kissed his little sister on the forehead, and headed out the door. At precisely 9 a.m., Ethan arrived at the towering building in downtown Grey Rock. It gleamed with mirrored windows and rose like a monument to wealth. He looked up in disbelief. This was Mr. Whitmore's headquarters. The receptionist eyed him curiously as he entered, but a call had already been made. "Mr. Whitmore is expecting you," she said kindly. "Top floor." Ethan stepped into the elevator, watching the floor numbers rise higher and higher. When the doors finally opened, he was greeted by a sweeping office filled with sunlight, glass walls, and a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Mr. Whitmore stood by the window, phone in hand, giving quick orders to a team of executives. When he spotted Ethan, he smiled and waved him in. "Welcome, Ethan," he said. "This is where ideas become reality. This is the city of dreams." Ethan stepped forward amazed. "It's like another world." No, Mr. Whitmore replied, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. It's the same world. You just haven't seen this side of it yet. Mr. Whitmore led Ethan through the maze of glass-walled offices and buzzing departments. Everywhere they passed, employees paused to glance curiously at the teenager walking beside the company's billionaire CEO. They stopped in front of a sleek glass door with golden letters etched across it, Innovation Lab. This is where we build what hasn't been built yet, Mr. Whitmore said. New technology, community programs, education tools, ideas that matter. Inside, a team of young adults typed on laptops, sketched designs, and argued excitedly over a whiteboard. A woman in her 20s, with bright eyes and a tablet in hand, looked up. Mr. Whitmore, this is Sophia, head of youth outreach, he explained. Sophia, meet Ethan. He's not here for charity. He's here because he earned it. Sophia smiled and extended her hand. Nice to meet you, Ethan. You've caused quite a stir. Mr. Whitmore turned to Ethan. You're not just brave, you're smart, curious, and full of potential. So I'm offering you something I don't give out lightly. Ethan's eyes widened. An internship. After school, weekends, whatever your schedule allows. You'll shadow Sophia, learn how we work, how we build, and maybe how you can build something of your own one day. Ethan was speechless. Why me? Mr. Whitmore gave a small smile. Because when the world looked away, you didn't. Ethan returned to the office the following week, his heart racing with excitement. The internship wasn't what he expected. It was better. The first day was filled with quick lessons about the tech industry, design thinking, and social impact. He was amazed by how open everyone was, how they treated him not as a charity case, but as someone with ideas of his own. Sophia had been right by his side, guiding him through brainstorming sessions and showing him the basics of how they turned ideas into reality. On the second day, Sophia brought him into a meeting with the design team. Ethan, I want you to try something, she said, handing him a tablet. We're designing a new app to help kids in underprivileged areas access education. We need your ideas. Ethan's mind raced. He wasn't used to having a voice in situations like this, but the team was looking at him expectantly, waiting for him to speak. After a moment of hesitation, Ethan spoke up. What if the app could be like a virtual mentor? Someone who could talk to you, guide you, check in on you, not just give you lessons. The room fell silent for a moment. Then the team started nodding. One person typed quickly into the tablet. That's brilliant. We've never thought of using a virtual assistant in this way. Sophia beamed at him. See, Ethan, you've got it. Ethan couldn't believe it. His simple idea, one born from his own experiences, was being taken seriously. And for the first time in his life, he felt like he was truly making a difference. The day ended with Mr. Whitmore waiting for him at the door of the building. How'd it go? Mr. Whitmore asked, a knowing smile on his face. I think I can actually help people, Ethan said, his voice filled with wonder. You already are, Mr. Whitmore replied. Now, let's see where that can take you. A week had passed since Ethan's first successful contribution to the design team, and he was starting to feel like he truly belonged at the company. But Mr. Whitmore had something more to challenge him. A test, one that would ask Ethan to dig deeper into his character than ever before. One afternoon, Mr. Whitmore called Ethan into his office. The view of the city was breathtaking as always. The walls were lined with books on leadership, innovation, and business strategy. But today, there was an air of seriousness that made Ethan pause. Ethan, I've been watching you, Mr. Whitmore began, his voice calm yet intense. Your ideas are solid. Your enthusiasm is contagious. But now, I need to see something more. Ethan stood a little straighter, unsure of where this conversation was headed. We have an opportunity coming. Up, Mr. Whitmore continued. A huge project. It could help thousands of people in need. But it comes with a catch. The partners involved are difficult. They're not the kind of people who share your values. They want results at any cost. Ethan's stomach tightened. What do you mean? There's a fine line between doing what's right and doing what's profitable. I need to know where you stand, Mr. Whitmore said, his eyes locking onto Ethan's. If you had to choose between helping people and securing a huge financial deal, what would you do? The weight of the question hit Ethan like a ton of bricks. He wasn't just dealing with a hypothetical situation. He was facing a moral crossroads that could affect more than just the project, his very future. I would help people, Ethan said without hesitation. Money isn't everything. Mr. Whitmore studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. Good. That's the right answer. But it's harder than you think, Ethan. A lot of people would say the same thing. But when it's time to make a real decision, when the pressure's on, it gets complicated. And I want to know that you can make that decision, even when it's not easy. Ethan took a deep breath, understanding the gravity of the moment. I will, I promise. Mr. Whitmore stood up, offering Ethan his hand. I'm proud of you. I've been watching you grow, and you've already proven you can make a difference. But remember, success doesn't come at the expense of who you are. Don't lose sight of that. The days following that conversation with Mr. Whitmore were filled with pressure. Ethan could hardly focus on his schoolwork or the internship, as the question Mr. Whitmore had posed continued to echo in his mind. He knew what he had said. I would help people, but the reality of that decision was still unclear. One morning, a new set of documents arrived at the office. The project Mr. Whitmore had mentioned was moving forward. The partners, big-name investors, wanted to see results, and fast. The project could provide education to thousands of children in underserved communities. But there was a catch. Investors wanted to minimize costs. They proposed using cheaper, less reliable materials for the app, ones that could potentially put children's privacy and safety at risk. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at the proposal, torn. The deal was huge. It would secure funding for more projects, more outreach, and could help even more children in the future. But he knew what was at stake. Cutting corners could hurt the very people they were trying to help. That afternoon, he met with Mr. Whitmore in the office lounge. Have you had a chance to look over the proposal? Mr. Whitmore asked, his voice casual but his eyes sharp. Ethan nodded slowly, holding the papers in his hands. I don't think the investors understand what this could mean for the kids. If we use those materials, we're compromising their safety. Mr. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. You're right, but the investors will fight us on this. They'll say we're delaying progress, raising costs. You'll have to convince them, or we risk losing the funding altogether. Ethan's heart pounded. The stakes had just gotten real. He could see how much this meant to Mr. Whitmore, the success of the project, the good it could do. But it was clear that standing firm on the ethical side would come at a personal cost. I'll speak to them, Ethan said, his voice steady. I won't let them compromise the safety of the kids. Mr. Whitmore smiled, though it was tinged with concern. This is a hard lesson, Ethan. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't lead to instant success. But if you hold your ground, if you prove that integrity is worth more than a deal, people will see that. The next day, Ethan was on a video call with the investors, some of the most powerful names in the tech world. They looked at him with skepticism as he presented his case, explaining how the cheaper materials could jeopardize the app's security and the safety of its users. The tension in the room was palpable, but Ethan stood tall, speaking from the heart. You don't understand, he said. We're building this for children who need us. Cutting corners isn't just a bad business decision. It's the wrong thing to do. There was silence for a long moment before one of the investors spoke up. You're a bold kid, I'll give you that. But you're naive if you think you can run a business based on ethics alone. Ethan held his ground. Maybe I'm naive, but I know that no amount of profit is worth compromising the people who need us the most. The call ended with no clear resolution, but Mr. Whitmore's eyes gleamed with something proud as he watched Ethan from across the room. You did good, he said. You didn't back down, and that means something. Ethan smiled, but inside, a fire had been lit. This was just the beginning. The days following Ethan's presentation were filled with uncertainty. He wasn't sure if the investors had truly understood the gravity of what he was trying to say, or if they had just dismissed him as another naive kid with idealistic ideas. Mr. Whitmore had reassured him, but the tension was still there, hanging in the air. Ethan continued working at the office, now more determined than ever to prove that he wasn't just another intern. He spent long hours researching, drafting new proposals, and speaking with the team. But deep down, the pressure weighed on him. Then came the news. A message popped up on his phone one afternoon, and his heart sank when he read it. The investors had decided to move forward with the cheaper materials. They'd found another partner, willing to meet their financial demands, and the project would go on without the ethical safeguards Ethan had fought for. Mr. Whitmore called him into his office. The look on his face was a mixture of disappointment and understanding. "They're moving ahead with the project, Ethan," he said, his voice quiet. "But not the way we wanted." Ethan stood there staring at the floor. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. Everything he had stood up for, everything he had fought for, had been swept aside in the name of profit. "I don't get it," Ethan said, his voice tight. "How could they just ignore what we said?" "They're putting those kids at risk for money." Mr. Whitmore nodded slowly. "It's a harsh reality of the business world. But you didn't lose, Ethan. You stood up for what you believed in, and that matters. Sometimes standing firm on your values doesn't mean you win the battle, but it means you're true to yourself," Ethan felt a deep frustration welling up inside him. "So what now? Do we just walk away?" "Not necessarily," Mr. Whitmore replied, leaning forward. "There are ways to make changes in a project even after it's started. We can work with the new partners. We can try to steer the project in the right direction, even if it's not ideal." Ethan shook his head. "It's not the same. I wanted to make a difference, not just go along with what they want." Mr. Whitmore placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, Ethan, change happens slowly, but you're learning an important lesson. Integrity comes at a price. The question is, are you willing to keep fighting for what's right, even when it seems like the world is against you?" Ethan stood there for a long moment, his mind racing. He had never expected it to be easy, but this felt like a setback he hadn't been prepared for. As he left Mr. Whitmore's office, he glanced out the window at the city below. It was still the same city, the same streets, the same people. But now it felt like there was something more he needed to do, something bigger than just one project or one decision. He wasn't done yet. Days turned into weeks, and the disappointment from the investor's decision lingered in Ethan's mind. The project was moving forward, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something important had been lost. Mr. Whitmore's words about integrity and fighting for what was right still echoed in his head, but the reality was harsh. He wasn't sure how to keep pushing when it seemed like the system was stacked against him. One evening, as Ethan sat in his room going over his notes for school, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophia. "Sophia. Ethan, there's someone you need to meet. They want to talk to you about something important. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Innovation Lab." Ethan frowned, unsure of what Sophia meant. But curiosity got the best of him, and the next morning, he made his way to the office once again, hoping that maybe, just maybe, there was still a way to make a difference. Sophia greeted him with a smile when he arrived, leading him into one of the smaller meeting rooms. Inside, a woman in her mid-30s stood up as they entered. She had short, dark hair and wore a no-nonsense expression, but there was something in her eyes that was oddly familiar, like she had been through battles of her own. "Ethan, this is Maya," Sophia said. "She's the founder of a non-profit that helps children in underserved communities. We've been talking about you." Maya extended her hand. "It's good to finally meet you, Ethan. I've been hearing a lot of good things." Ethan shook, her hand still unsure of what was happening. Good things about me?" Sophia nodded. "You've got an eye for innovation, Ethan, and you care about the right things. That's rare." Maya smiled slightly. "We've been watching the situation with the project. We know the investors are more focused on profits than on people, but we're building something else, Something that doesn't have those compromises. Ethan felt a flicker of hope rising in his chest. What do you mean? We're developing an alternative educational platform, Maya explained. One that is completely safe, ethical, and community-driven. We want you to be a part of it. We need someone who understands what's at stake. Someone who isn't afraid to put the kids first. The words hit Ethan like a wave of relief. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. An opportunity to make a real impact. To create something from the ground up that didn't sacrifice its core values for profit. He felt a surge of determination. I'm in. How can I help? Maya's eyes brightened. We start small, we build trust, we make sure that everything we do is for the right reasons. You'll have a say in every step. Sophia smiled at Ethan, her approval clear. This is the chance you've been looking for, Ethan, and it's going to be different this time. No compromises. As Ethan walked out of the meeting room, he couldn't help but feel a weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Ethan dove headfirst into the new project, his heart filled with excitement and purpose. Maya and Sophia outlined their vision for the educational platform, and it felt like the kind of work that could change lives. Work that didn't have to compromise on values. They weren't just building an app, they were building a community of learners and mentors. A safe space where kids could access education, mentorship, and a future that was once out of reach. For weeks, Ethan worked alongside Maya and Sophia, contributing ideas and offering fresh perspectives. He began to see the scope of what they were creating, an app that would not only provide lessons, but would connect students with real-time mentors, offer safe discussion forums, and have built-in safety features to ensure privacy. It was clear from the start that the team was determined to keep everything above board. Every decision was made with the kids' best interests in mind. There were no shortcuts, no corners to cut. It was challenging, but it was exactly what Ethan had been hoping for. A project built on integrity, innovation, and a commitment to making the world better, not just richer. But as the weeks passed, the pressures of making a product that could stand up to the standards of big tech companies grew. The platform was coming together, but it wasn't easy. Every line of code, every feature, every connection had to be perfect. And while the team believed in the project, Ethan began to see the enormous stakes involved. If this didn't succeed, the kids they were trying to help might be left with nothing. One afternoon, as they sat in the lab reviewing the progress, Maya turned to Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "We're getting close to launch, but we still need a lot of work," she said. "It's going to be tough, but I think we can pull it off." Ethan nodded, but there was a heaviness in his chest. He had seen the strain on everyone's faces lately, including his own. The idea of bringing something this important to life was exhilarating, but also terrifying. "We're all in this together," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We can do this." Sophia, who had been silently working at a nearby table, looked up and smiled. "That's the spirit, Ethan. You've learned fast. This project is everything we've worked for." Just then, Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her face turning serious. "We've just heard from the investors," she said. "They're offering to buy us out. They want us to join forces with them and take our platform to a much larger scale. But they're asking us to compromise, cut down on safety features, reduce our content to maximize profits, and push our platform to as many users as possible, regardless of their needs." Ethan's stomach churned. He had seen this kind of thing before. The promise of a larger platform, more funding, more visibility. It was tempting, but at what cost? He had just fought for the opposite, a safe, ethical space where kids weren't treated like products. "They're offering a lot of money," Maya added, her tone a mix of frustration and determination. "But at what price?" Ethan stood up, pacing around the room. The pressure was overwhelming, but he knew what he had to do. This was his moment, his chance to stand firm, to protect the integrity of everything they had built. "No," he said firmly, "we don't need to sell out. We've built this with heart, and we can keep it that way. We don't need their..." Money if it means we're compromising everything we stand for. Maya and Sophia exchanged a look, both of them nodding in agreement. They had built something special, something that didn't need the approval of the big investors to succeed. It was about the kids. It was about staying true to their mission. That's what I wanted to hear, Maya said, a fierce determination in her eyes. We'll keep moving forward no matter what. As Ethan stood with them, ready to face whatever came next, he felt a surge of pride. They weren't just creating an app, they were creating a movement, and he was at the heart of it, proving that when you fight for what's right, no matter how difficult the road, it's worth it. The decision to decline the investors' offer was both a relief and a burden. It meant that the team would have to work harder, be more creative, and sacrifice the safety net of big money. But it also meant that they were staying true to their mission, something Ethan had come to realize was far more important than any paycheck. The days leading up to the launch were a blur of final touches, debugging and fine-tuning the platform. Ethan worked tirelessly, spending late nights at the office poring over every detail. Every aspect of the app had to be perfect. Every interaction, every feature had to be seamless, intuitive, and, above all, safe. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him, but he embraced it. This was what he had always wanted, to make a real impact, to help those who needed it the most. But as launch day drew closer, a new challenge emerged. One afternoon, Maya called an impromptu meeting. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone had been working around the clock, and there was a sense of urgency in the air. "I've been contacted by a major competitor," Maya said, her voice steady but serious. "They're aware of what we're doing. They've seen our progress and now they're offering us a deal. Buying our platform, or they'll launch a similar app with all the features we're offering, but without the ethical safeguards." So, room went silent. "They're threatening us?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Not exactly a threat, but it's clear what they're doing," Maya replied. "They want to bury us. They know our platform could be a game changer. But if we stand up to them, we risk being drowned out by their resources and influence." Ethan could feel his heart race. The pressure was mounting, and it seemed like there was no escape from the corporate giants who didn't care about ethics, only profits. Yet the conviction in his heart remained unwavering. "No," he said firmly, his voice strong. "We won't let them take this from us. This platform isn't just about making money. It's about doing what's right. We've come too far to back down now." Maya nodded, her expression resolute. "I knew you'd say that, Ethan. That's why we need to make sure we're ready. If we can't fight them head-to-head with resources, we'll fight them with heart. We'll make sure the world knows why this platform matters." Over the next few weeks, the team worked tirelessly, preparing for launch day. They knew they were entering a battlefield where resources weren't on their side, but they also knew that their mission was stronger than any competitor's ability to throw money at the problem. They relied on the strength of their vision and the power of their community. They reached out to educators, parents, and students, spreading the word about the platform and what it stood for. On the day of the launch, Ethan sat in front of his computer, staring at the screen as the final countdown began. His heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment that would determine whether all their hard work would pay off. He knew it wasn't just about numbers and growth. It was about proving that a platform built with integrity could stand toe-to-toe with the giants who ruled the industry. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Maya's voice echoed through the office, and with a deep breath, they hit the launch button. The website went live. For a moment, there was nothing. Just silence. Then, slowly, the first wave of users began to register. The platform started to hum with activity as children, teachers, and parents logged in to explore what they had created. Ethan felt a rush of excitement and relief. It was happening. It was real. Hours passed, and the team kept an eye on the numbers, watching as the platform began to grow. The feedback came in, and it was overwhelmingly positive. Parents and teachers praised the platform's safety features, the ease of use, and the genuine care that went into every aspect of its design. Even the media started to take notice, writing articles about the ethical tech movement and how this new platform was offering something different from the usual, corporate-driven apps. But despite the success of the launch, Ethan knew this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be filled with challenges. The competitors weren't going to back off easily, and there would be even harder battles to fight. But as he looked around at his team, Maya, Sophia, and the others, he knew they were ready. They had something no one could take away from them: their integrity. The days after the launch were a whirlwind. The platform quickly gained traction, with more and more users registering each day. The team couldn't believe how fast things were growing, but they also knew that this was just the beginning. Ethan felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. They had taken the first step toward creating something truly meaningful, but with success came new challenges. It didn't take long for the first issue to arise. A week after launch, they began to notice that the platform was experiencing slowdowns during peak usage times. The system was struggling to handle the surge of users, and there were reports of glitches and errors from parents and educators. Ethan's heart sank as he read through the support tickets. This was the last thing they needed. Maya called an emergency meeting to address the issue. Everyone gathered around the conference table, the mood tense but focused. They had been prepared for challenges, but this one was critical. If they couldn't fix the technical issues, the platform's reputation could suffer, and with it, their mission. "Okay," Maya said, her voice calm but urgent. "We knew this day would come. We're scaling faster than we anticipated, and the infrastructure just isn't keeping up. We need to fix this, and fast." Ethan, who had been studying the server logs for hours, spoke up. "I think I've identified the problem. The server load isn't balanced properly, and we're running out of capacity. If we don't fix it soon, the system will crash during peak hours." Sophia, who had been quietly working on a solution, raised her hand. "I've been in contact with a few cloud service providers. We might be able to scale up the infrastructure quickly if we move to a more robust solution." Maya nodded, deep in thought. "We need to make sure we don't just throw money at the problem. We can't compromise on quality or safety. We need to find a solution that will scale with us, without putting the integrity of the platform at risk." Ethan felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. The success of their platform was on the line, but so was the very thing that made it special: their commitment to safety, ethics, and transparency. "We could explore more affordable options," Ethan suggested, "but it might mean slower scaling. But if we rush into a solution just to keep up with the growth, we could lose control over how things are run." Maya looked at him, impressed by his level-headed thinking. "You're right, Ethan. We can't rush this. We've already faced tough decisions, and this is just another one. Let's take the time to find a solution that works long-term." They spent the next few days discussing options, consulting with experts, and weighing the pros and cons of each approach. The pressure was intense, but they all knew that rushing into a decision could compromise everything they had worked for. Finally, after several meetings, they decided to partner with a cloud service that prioritized both scalability and ethical data management. It wasn't the cheapest option, but it was the right one for their values. The team worked around the clock to integrate the new system, testing it extensively to ensure it would handle the growing number of users without sacrificing security or privacy. Launches of new features were put on hold while they focused on stabilizing the platform, but Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Every challenge was a reminder of why they were doing this, to create something different, something that would stand the test of time. A week later, the upgraded system went live, and the improvements were immediately apparent. The platform ran smoothly, even during peak usage, and the feedback from users was overwhelmingly positive. The team breathed a collective sigh of relief, but even as they celebrated their success, Ethan knew that this wouldn't be the last challenge they would face. There would be more hurdles ahead, more decisions to make, and more obstacles to overcome. But this time he wasn't afraid. They had proven that they could face adversity with integrity, and that made all the difference. Ethan stood in the office, watching his team celebrate the small victory. He knew there was more work to be done, but for the first time in a long time, he felt confident that they could handle anything. With the technical issues behind them, Ethan and the team could finally breathe a little easier. The platform was stable, and the users were pouring in. Schools, parents, and children alike were praising the app for its user-friendly interface, educational resources, and, most importantly, its safety features. It was clear that they were onto something bigger than they had originally imagined. However, their success didn't go unnoticed. Word of their ethical tech platform quickly spread beyond their initial circles. While many embraced the innovation they were offering, not everyone was thrilled. One afternoon, as the team sat in the office reviewing feedback, Maya received a phone call that would change everything. It was from a prominent tech journalist who had been investigating the rise of educational tech startups. "Maya, I've been following your platform's growth," the journalist said. "I've spoken to several parents, educators, and even some of your competitors. You're doing something different here, something important. I'd love to do a feature on you for the major tech news outlet." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "That's amazing. We'd be honored." The journalist continued. "But I have to ask, are you prepared for the media attention? There's a lot of competition in the educational tech space. And with your platform gaining traction, the big players might start looking for ways to challenge you. Are you ready to face the scrutiny?" Maya glanced at Ethan, who had been listening in on the conversation. The question hit a nerve. They had been working tirelessly behind the scenes to maintain their integrity, but now the stakes were higher. This was more than just about the platform. It was about staying true to the mission and facing the scrutiny that came with being successful. "We're ready," Maya said, her voice steady. "We're in this for the right reasons, and if the scrutiny comes, we'll stand our ground. We're building something that matters." The call ended, and the weight of what they were about to face sank in. Media attention would bring both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, it could open doors to partnerships, collaborations, and funding that could help their platform grow. But on the other hand, it would also bring the harsh spotlight of public opinion and the pressure to conform to industry norms. As the days passed, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He had never been one to seek the limelight, and now that it was coming their way, he wasn't sure how to handle it. He had always been more comfortable behind the scenes, coding and designing, rather than standing at the front of a media frenzy. One evening, after a long day of work, Ethan sat down with Maya and Sophia in the break room. The office was quiet, and the only sound was the soft hum of computers in the background. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," Ethan admitted. "I mean, it's great that the platform is doing so well, but the media attention, I'm not sure I can handle the pressure. What if we mess up?" Maya smiled and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, you've already proven that you have the strength and the vision to make this platform succeed. You're not in this alone. We're all in it together. And remember, you're not building this for the media or the attention. You're building it for the kids, for the future. Keep that in mind and the rest will follow." Sophia nodded in agreement. "We've all had doubts along the way, but look at how far we've come. We've built something real. And no matter what the media says, we know the truth. Our mission is what matters." Ethan took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity wash over him. It wasn't about the spotlight. It was about staying true to their values. They had already made a difference, and now they needed to continue that journey with confidence. The next day, the feature article about their platform went live. The response was overwhelming. The article praised the ethical approach of the platform, highlighting how it was changing the way children learned online. It emphasized the importance of safety, privacy, and community, values that were often overlooked by the larger tech companies. But as the article gained traction, the reactions from the big players in the industry were swift. Emails and phone calls started pouring in from investors, CEOs, and executives from major tech companies, all eager to get a piece of the action. One particular email caught Ethan's eye. It was from the CEO of a major education technology corporation, an industry giant that had been watching their rise closely. The email was short and to the point. "I've been following your platform's success with great interest. We'd love to discuss the possibility of a partnership. Let's talk. The email was polite, but there was a sense of urgency behind it. They weren't just offering a partnership, they were trying to bring the team into the fold. The offer was tempting, but Ethan could feel a knot form in his stomach. He knew the company's track record. They were all about scale, profits, and market share. They had the resources to take the platform to new heights, but Ethan wasn't sure if it would be worth it. Would they be able to maintain the same ethical standards, or would they be swallowed up by corporate greed? Ethan took the email to Maya and Sophia, his mind racing with uncertainty. "We've come a long way," Maya said, reading the email. "But this is a big decision. We can't make it lightly. We need to think about what's best for the platform and the people we're serving." Ethan felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. They had come so far, but now they were at a crossroads. The next move they made could determine the future of the platform and the mission they had fought so hard to protect. The email from the CEO weighed heavily on Ethan's mind. The allure of a partnership with a giant tech company was undeniable. They could gain access to resources, funding, and technology that would help them scale the platform to new heights. But at what cost? As the team gathered for another round of discussions, the air was thick with tension. Maya had already called an all-hands meeting to address the offer, and everyone knew the magnitude of what was at stake. Ethan, however, couldn't shake the feeling that this decision wasn't just about business. It was about the values they had worked so hard to uphold. "Here's the deal," Maya said, pulling up the email on the screen for everyone to see. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If we say yes, we could scale faster than we ever imagined. But it's clear from the CEO's tone that they want to take control. This is not just about funding. They want influence." Ethan's mind raced. He had always known that the tech industry was full of hidden agendas, but now it felt too real. The platform had grown in ways they never thought possible, and the idea of being in control of its future was what had driven them all this far. But a partnership with a corporate giant could mean they'd lose that control. Sophia broke the silence. "It's not just the resources they offer, it's the direction they want to take us in. They've been following our model closely, and their influence could make us mainstream, possibly even more profitable. But at what cost? Would we still be able to make decisions that align with our values?" Maya leaned back in her chair, her gaze intense. "We've always known that we'd face these kinds of decisions. What we need to decide is whether this partnership would be a stepping stone to greater impact, or if it would dilute everything we've worked for." Ethan looked at the team, feeling the weight of their gazes on him. This wasn't just a decision for the company. It was a decision that would shape their legacy. He had to make sure they stayed true to their mission, even if it meant turning down the offer of a lifetime. "I think we need to ask ourselves one question," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "What's more important, the platform's growth or our ability to keep it ethical? If we say yes to this partnership, we may get all the resources we need, but we might also lose our soul. I don't want to risk that, not for anything." Maya and Sophia exchanged glances, and a sense of unity filled the room. Ethan wasn't alone in his thinking. The team was aligned in their belief that the platform's integrity mattered more than any corporate offer. They had built this from the ground up, and they couldn't let it be compromised by the corporate machine. After a long pause, Maya finally spoke. "I agree. The money, the resources, they're tempting, but they're not what we're about. We started this because we wanted to make a difference, not just build a business. We can grow without selling out. We've already proven that." Sophia nodded in agreement. "We've been through so much already, and we've come out stronger each time. We can keep building this platform on our terms. If we focus on what's right, the growth will follow." The room was silent as everyone absorbed their words. There were no easy answers, and the road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult. Turning down the offer was a gamble. They were choosing the harder path, the path of staying true to their mission no matter the obstacles. But it was the right one. Ethan took a deep breath and looked around the room, his heart swelling with pride. Then it settled. We turn them down. We're not here to be bought, we're here to make a real difference. Maya smiled, her eyes gleaming with determination. I knew you'd say that. We're going to do this our way, together. The team stood united in their decision, knowing it would not be easy. There would be more challenges ahead, competitors, skeptics, and obstacles that they couldn't even foresee. But they had built something meaningful, something with purpose, and they weren't about to let it slip away for the sake of quick success. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was another email from the CEO. He opened it. I understand your position. However, I urge you to reconsider. We could offer you a deal that allows you to maintain control, but with our resources. Think about the possibilities. This could be the beginning of something monumental for both of us. Ethan stared at the email for a moment. It was polite, but there was an undercurrent of pressure, a subtle attempt to persuade. He could feel the weight of their words, the promise of what could be. But he knew deep down that no matter how tempting this wasn't the path they wanted to take. With a steady hand, Ethan typed a reply. Thank you for your offer. However, after careful consideration, we have decided to continue on our current path. We believe in what we're doing, and we want to stay true to our mission. We wish you all the best. He hit send. As the team gathered around, Maya leaned over to Ethan. You did the right thing. Ethan smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. It's not about the deal. It's about the people we're helping. That's what matters. The team stood together, their resolve stronger than ever. They had made their choice, and now it was time to move forward on their terms. With the decision made, the team at the platform felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had chosen the more challenging path, but they also knew that it was the right one. Now, it was time to focus on what mattered most: the users, the mission, and the future. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. They continued to improve the platform, adding new features and refining the user experience. Ethan, who had once feared the weight of leadership, now felt a sense of pride in the direction they were heading. He was no longer just a developer. He was a part of something bigger, a movement that was slowly gaining momentum. But even as they focused on their work, the competition was heating up. The corporate giants that had once been just distant competitors were now starting to pay more attention. Several new platforms launched, each boasting more resources and flashy features. The industry was buzzing with talk of acquisitions, mergers, and rapid expansion. Ethan could feel the pressure mounting. There was no denying that the competition was fierce, and the giants were doing everything they could to secure their place at the top. But Ethan wasn't worried. The team had built something authentic, and he knew that the value they were offering couldn't be replicated by a corporation chasing profits. One evening, as the team sat around brainstorming new ideas, Maya spoke up. We've been focusing a lot on what we're up against, but let's not forget why we started this. We're not just trying to build a better app. We're building something that's changing the way people think about education and safety online. That's our strength. Ethan looked at her, nodding. Right. We've always been about creating a platform that puts kids first. That's what makes us different. We can't get distracted by the noise. We need to stay true to that. Sophia, who had been quiet for a moment, added, and we've got a lot of loyal users. They believe in us because we're not just about the product. We're about the mission. We need to keep that at the forefront of everything we do. The conversation sparked new energy in the room. Instead of viewing the competition as a threat, they began to see it as a challenge. If the giants were trying to catch up, then it was their job to keep innovating, to keep pushing the boundaries of what they could offer. Over the next few months, they launched a series of new features, each one designed to further enhance the safety and educational value of the platform. They introduced live tutoring sessions, interactive lessons, and a new social network for students and educators to connect. But most importantly, they introduced a series of resources aimed at empowering parents to monitor and control what their children saw online. The new features were a hit. Parents loved the ability to customize their child's learning environment, while teachers praised the interactive lessons that made their classrooms more dynamic. The platform was growing faster than ever, and Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment as he watched the number of users climb. However, just as things seemed to be going smoothly, the team received an unexpected email. It was from one of their investors, someone they had trusted to help support the platform's growth. The email was brief, but the message was clear. "We've been monitoring the market, and after careful consideration, we've decided that we need to see a significant increase in revenue, or we will be forced to reconsider our investment." The words hit Ethan like a ton of bricks. He had always known that investors had their own agendas, but this felt different. It wasn't just about the growth of the platform anymore. It was about numbers, about making the platform more profitable at all costs. Maya and Sophia read the email, their faces turning serious. "We knew this was coming," Maya said, breaking the silence. "Investors want results, but we've built this platform with a different kind of vision. We're not just about making money. We're about making a difference." Ethan felt conflicted. They had come so far, but the pressure to meet investor demands was growing. It wasn't just about the mission anymore. It was about keeping the investors happy, keeping the platform sustainable. "I don't want to sacrifice everything we've built just to make a quick profit," Ethan admitted, his voice tinged with frustration. "But how do we keep going without their support?" Sophia took a deep breath. "We don't have to sacrifice everything. We just need to be strategic. We can continue to innovate, but we need to think about how to make the platform sustainable long-term, without compromising our values." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "We've faced challenges before. This is just another hurdle. We can't let the pressure distract us from what we're doing. We need to think about how to grow in a way that stays true to our mission." Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. They weren't alone in this. They were a team, and together, they could face any challenge. They had already built something remarkable, and they weren't going to let anyone take that away from them. As the weeks went by, the team worked tirelessly to find a balance between growth and their core values. They continued to introduce new features and refine the platform, but they also focused on creating a more sustainable revenue model. Instead of relying on external funding, they began exploring partnerships with like-minded organizations and foundations that aligned with their mission. The decision wasn't easy, but it paid off. As the platform grew, it attracted more users, and the word-of-mouth marketing from satisfied parents and teachers helped boost their visibility. The more they stayed true to their mission, the more success seemed to follow. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Ethan stood on the rooftop of their office building looking out over the skyline. It had been a long journey, filled with ups and downs, but they had made it. They had built something that mattered, and no matter what came next, they knew they had created a foundation that was unshakable. The future was bright. As the team settled into their new rhythm, with the pressure of investor demands somewhat alleviated by their more sustainable approach, a breakthrough came when they least expected it. The platform's user base had grown exponentially, but the team still felt the sting of balancing both growth and their mission. Every day felt like a tightrope walk, trying to maintain their core values while scaling up the platform. Ethan had been putting in long hours, working with the development team to improve the back end and ensure that the infrastructure could handle the increased traffic. One morning, as he sipped his coffee and ran through the analytics reports, something caught his eye. A sudden spike in usage in a region they had never anticipated, rural areas. He immediately called a team meeting. "Maya, Sophia, I gotta see this," Ethan said, pulling up the data on the screen. "There's a massive uptick in usage from rural communities. These areas are typically underserved, and they've never been the focus of large educational tech platforms. Our platform is reaching people we didn't even target." Maya and Sophia leaned in, studying the data. "This is incredible," Maya said. "But why now? Have we changed anything in the app recently?" "No, not really," Ethan replied. "But maybe it's the new features we rolled out." the customizable learning tools, the safety measures. It could be resonating with parents and educators in these areas. They need a solution that works for their specific challenges. Sophia smiled. I think we've stumbled onto something big here. These communities need access to quality education, but they don't have the same resources. If we can tap into this market, we might not just be changing the tech landscape. We could change the way education is distributed across the country. Ethan felt a rush of excitement. The team had always known they were building something meaningful, but seeing the platform reach people in places they hadn't even considered gave them a renewed sense of purpose. The next step was clear. They needed to focus on these underserved communities, ensuring that their platform continued to meet the needs of parents, teachers, and students in rural areas. They were no longer just building a product for urban centers. They were reaching the heart of the country. But with this new growth came new challenges. The competition was already eyeing these untapped markets, and it wasn't long before they heard whispers of rival platforms launching similar features aimed specifically at rural students. However, this only fueled Ethan and the team's drive to be better, to go further. Instead of simply copying the competition, they decided to double down on what set them apart, empowering users to personalize their educational experience. They started working with rural educators and parents directly, asking for their feedback and insight on what was missing from current educational resources. What resulted was a series of partnerships with community organizations that not only helped them tailor the platform but also spread the word to communities in need. In just a few months, the platform was adopted by thousands of rural schools, and the impact was palpable. Stories of students in remote villages excelling thanks to the platform flooded in. Parents sent heartfelt messages, thanking the team for giving their children a chance to learn in a way that felt safe and empowering. This newfound success led to an unexpected opportunity. One morning, Ethan received an email from a large nonprofit focused on educational equity. The email was an invitation to a national conference on the future of education, where thought leaders from across the country would be gathering to discuss how to bridge the digital divide. The nonprofit wanted the platform to be a part of that conversation. Ethan, this is huge, Maya said after reading the email aloud. If we can present at this conference, we can solidify our position as a leader in the educational tech space. It's a chance to show the world what we've built and to prove that technology can be a force for good. Ethan wasn't sure at first. The thought of speaking at a national conference felt overwhelming. But Maya was right. This was a chance to take their mission to the next level, to show that their platform was about more than just profit. It was about impact. We're doing this, Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. We're going to share our story, and we're going to show people that education isn't just about access to technology. It's about using technology to create opportunity and build a better future. The preparations for the conference began in earnest. The team worked late into the nights, perfecting their presentation and rehearsing their speeches. They wanted to be ready. They had a vision for the future, and it was time to share it with the world. The day of the conference arrived, and the team found themselves standing in front of a packed auditorium. The atmosphere was charged with excitement as educators, policymakers, and tech innovators filled the seats, eager to hear the latest ideas in educational reform. Ethan stepped up to the stage, his heart racing, but his mind clear. As he looked out at the audience, he realized that this was the moment they had been working toward. He wasn't just presenting an app, he was presenting a movement. He began by sharing the story of their platform's journey, how they had started with a simple idea to create a safer, more ethical educational space for children and families. He spoke of the challenges they had faced, the choices they had made, and the growth they had experienced. But it wasn't just about the platform. Ethan spoke passionately about the real impact they were making in communities that had been historically underserved by traditional educational technology. He shared stories of students in rural areas using the platform to excel, of parents finding peace of mind, knowing their children were learning in a safe, supportive environment. By the end of his speech, the room was silent, and the applause that followed was deafening. Ethan's heart swelled with pride, and he knew that they had made the right decision. Their mission was resonating, and they had proven that there was a place in the world for ethical, people-first tech solutions. The conference was a turning point for the platform. It not only opened doors to new partnerships but also solidified their place in the conversation about the future of education. Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that they were on the path to changing lives, not just through technology, but through values and vision. The success of the national conference was just the beginning. In the weeks following their presentation, the team found themselves fielding requests from all corners of the educational world. Universities, government officials, and nonprofit organizations reached out to discuss potential partnerships. It was clear that their platform was no longer just a small startup. It had become a beacon of hope for those seeking to transform education through technology. As the platform's reach grew, so did its influence. Ethan couldn't help but reflect on the journey they had taken. From the initial idea of creating a safe space for learning, to navigating the difficult decision of turning down the corporate giants, to now standing at the forefront of a movement that could reshape the future of education. Yet with this newfound success came new challenges. The competition was relentless. While Ethan and the team had always prided themselves on their ethical approach to business, others in the industry were willing to make compromises to get ahead. The pressure to stay ahead of the curve, to innovate at a pace that matched the fast-moving tech industry, was intensifying. One afternoon, Maya called for a meeting to discuss the next phase of their strategy. The mood in the room was focused, the weight of their responsibility heavy on everyone's shoulders. "We've made incredible strides," Maya began, "but we're facing a crucial point in our growth. We have to make some big decisions about how we scale. Do we stick to our current model, or do we start exploring new ways to monetize and grow even faster?" Ethan sat back, feeling the weight of the question. They had built something meaningful, but the pressure to maintain that balance was taking its toll. They couldn't afford to lose sight of their mission, but they also knew that they needed more resources to continue expanding. "We need to stay true to our values," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "The moment we compromise on that is the moment we lose everything we've worked for. But I also recognize that we need to find ways to be more sustainable." Sophia nodded. "We've always believed in building from the ground up. We can't rush into something that doesn't align with our vision, but there's no denying that we have the potential to reach even more people. We need to find ways to scale in a way that makes sense for us." The team spent the next few days brainstorming, considering every option. They explored partnerships with educational institutions, content creators, and other nonprofits that shared their values. They also began experimenting with new revenue models, offering premium features for schools and parents, while keeping the core educational resources free for everyone. Meanwhile, the team continued to work tirelessly on improving the platform. They enhanced the adaptive learning technology, ensuring that the platform could better cater to individual learning styles. They also worked to strengthen their security features, knowing that protecting their users' data was paramount. But just as they were beginning to make progress, they were hit with a setback that shook them to their core. A rival tech company, one of the giants they had once turned down for a partnership, launched a new campaign targeting rural communities. The campaign boasted all the features their platform offered, but with the added incentive of massive investments in marketing and support. The timing was no coincidence. The rival company had clearly been watching their progress, and now they were making a direct play for the same market. It was a bold move, and it felt like an existential threat to everything they had worked for. "We've got to act fast," Maya said, pacing the room as she read through the marketing materials. "For the new campaign, they've got the resources to saturate these communities quickly. If we don't do something soon, we could lose our foothold." Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't just about competition, it was about protecting their mission. They couldn't Let a larger company swoop in and take the credit for the work they had done in these underserved areas. They had to respond, but how? Sophia spoke up. We've always been more than just a platform, we're a movement. The people who use our platform believe in what we're doing. They believe in us. It's not just about the tech, it's about the trust we've built. Ethan nodded. Exactly. We've spent years building relationships with parents, teachers, and students. They're not going to be swayed by flashy marketing and promises. We need to double down on the community aspect. We need to reach out directly to the people who matter most, those who have been using our platform to make a difference in their own communities. The team quickly sprang into action. They launched a new campaign of their own, one that focused on the stories of the real people using the platform. They reached out to educators in rural areas, asking them to share their experiences with the platform. Parents, too, were encouraged to tell their stories about how the platform had impacted their children's education. Within weeks, the team saw a shift. Word-of-mouth recommendations from the platform's users began to spread faster than any marketing campaign could. The message was clear. This wasn't just a product. It was a community of people who believed in the same mission, who were committed to creating change. The rival tech company's flashy campaign couldn't compete with the authenticity and trust that had been built over the years. The team's focus on real human stories resonated far more than any advertisement. Their community rallied around them, and soon they were back on track, growing faster than ever. Ethan felt a deep sense of pride as he watched the platform continue to thrive. They had faced one of their biggest challenges yet, and they had come out on top, not because of their tech or their features, but because of the relationships they had built and the trust they had earned. As the team gathered together for a celebration, Maya raised a glass. To the people who believed in us from the beginning, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. To the parents, the teachers, the kids, and to us, because we didn't just build a platform, we built a movement. Everyone cheered, and for a moment, Ethan felt the weight of their success, knowing that they had built something far more meaningful than just a company. They had created a ripple effect that was changing lives, one student at a time. The platform's success had surpassed even their wildest expectations. The team had worked tirelessly, and the results spoke for themselves. The word-of-mouth buzz from rural communities had been overwhelming. Ethan, Maya, and Sophia spent every day speaking with educators, parents, and children, listening to their stories of how the platform had helped transform their lives. But while the platform was thriving, a new set of challenges emerged. As they expanded into more regions, they had to confront the logistical difficulties that came with scaling on such a large scale. Ensuring reliable service in remote areas, dealing with language barriers, and navigating different educational systems across states and countries was no small feat. The team knew that they couldn't do it alone. They needed partners. One afternoon, Ethan met with a well-respected figure in the world of educational nonprofit organizations, a woman named Grace Wells. Grace had heard about their platform's success and was interested in exploring ways they could collaborate. The potential was immense. Grace's organization had been working for years to bridge the gap between rural and urban education, and they had deep connections in communities all over the world. We've seen firsthand the challenges that come with reaching underserved communities, Grace said, her voice calm but filled with purpose. But I've been watching your team's progress. You've created something that's not just sustainable, but meaningful. The way you're approaching education, safety, accessibility, empowerment, it's exactly what these communities need. Ethan felt a spark of hope. We're committed to helping these communities, but we can't do it alone. We need resources, people on the ground who understand the specific needs of these areas. Grace nodded. We've already established relationships in many of these areas, and we know how to mobilize quickly. If we work together, we can make a real difference. We have the networks, and you have the technology. The partnership seemed like a perfect fit. Grace's organization had the boots-on-the-ground experience, while the platform had the technology and infrastructure. Together, they could ensure that no community was left behind in the digital divide. Over the next few weeks, the two teams worked together to devise a strategy that would bring the platform to even more underserved areas. They set out to create localized content, work with local educators to adapt lessons to regional needs, and ensure that the platform's security measures were tailored to the specific challenges these communities faced. The collaboration was a turning point for the platform. By the time the team launched their first joint initiative, they had already started seeing a measurable impact. Parents in rural areas now had a direct line to the resources they needed. Teachers were receiving the support they had long been denied. And most importantly, students were learning in an environment that was safe, supportive, and empowering. But just as they were celebrating this new chapter, they received news that made everything feel uncertain again. One of their biggest investors, the one who had been supportive throughout their journey, had unexpectedly pulled out. The reason? The nonprofit partnership. "This doesn't make sense," Maya said, slamming her hand on the table as she read the email aloud. "We've always known that our mission was bigger than just turning a profit. Why would they pull out now?" Ethan's heart sank. They had worked so hard to reach this point, and now it felt like they were being undermined. The email from the investor was clear. They had chosen to prioritize profit over impact, and they no longer believed in the direction the platform was heading. Sophia spoke softly, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "This was always going to happen. We've made choices that aren't about just money. We knew some investors would pull out when they realized we weren't chasing fast profits. But that doesn't change what we're building." Maya shook her head. "It's not about the money, it's about the trust we've built. These investors don't get it." Ethan, feeling the weight of it all, let out a sigh. "Maybe they don't, but that's not what matters. What matters is the work we're doing here. It's real, and it's changing lives. We can't let one investor's decision make us doubt everything we've built." The team gathered around the table, their minds focused on the path ahead. They knew that the road to success was never going to be easy, but they also knew that they had made a promise to the families they served. They weren't going to break that promise just because an investor pulled out. "Let's refocus on what we can control," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We've got the support of the communities and we've got the technology. We're not going to let this setback derail us." They decided to continue moving forward with the nonprofit partnership, even without the investors' backing. In many ways, this was a blessing in disguise. It forced them to reconsider their dependence on external funding and made them more determined to find other ways to sustain the platform's growth. Over the next few months, the team worked hard to diversify their funding sources. They secured new grants from educational foundations and launched a crowdfunding campaign that brought in donations from passionate parents and educators who believed in their mission. Slowly but surely, they began to rebuild, stronger than before. Meanwhile, the platform's impact continued to grow. Stories of students in remote areas excelling because of the platform spread, and more schools began to sign on. Educators praised the platform for its ability to adapt to their needs, while parents were thrilled to see their children learning in an environment that emphasized safety, empathy, and engagement. Ethan had moments where doubt crept in. But every time he thought about how far they had come, about the lives they were touching, he was reminded of why they had started this journey in the first place. As the team gathered one evening to review their progress, Ethan smiled to himself. The road ahead was still uncertain, and challenges would continue to come. But they had built something far more valuable than a product. They had built a legacy, and no investor's withdrawal could take that away. The days following the loss of their investor were tough. Despite the initial shock, Ethan, Maya, and Sophia found themselves more resolute than ever. The decision to push forward without the backing of their former investor was, in many ways, a turning point for the team. They had learned to rely on each other and the communities they served, rather than external sources of validation. And with that, they began to make their most daring move yet, expanding internationally. The partnership with Gracewell's nonprofit organization had opened up new doors. The team started working together to identify regions across the globe where their platform could make a significant impact. While many international markets posed their own set of challenges, cultural differences, language barriers, varying educational systems, the platform's adaptable design made it the perfect tool for bridging these gaps. Ethan found himself constantly on the move, traveling to countries he had once only read about in textbooks. He visited schools in South America, met with nonprofit leaders in Southeast Asia, and spoke with educators in Africa. Every place he went, he saw the same thing: the undeniable need for accessible, safe, and effective educational resources. 1. Morning. Ethan stood in front of a small rural classroom in Kenya, watching as a group of children sat eagerly in front of a computer, interacting with the platform. The classroom, while humble, was filled with an energy that was hard to ignore. Children who had once been relegated to outdated textbooks and overcrowded classrooms were now interacting with content tailored to their needs. The teacher, a woman named Amina, turned to Ethan with a smile. "We used to have no resources. Now, thanks to your platform, these children have the world at their fingertips. They are learning faster and they are more excited than I've ever seen." Ethan's heart swelled with pride. This was the kind of impact he had dreamed of when they first started. It wasn't just about the technology. It was about giving these children the tools they needed to succeed. The expansion into international markets wasn't without its challenges, though. In many regions, internet connectivity was unreliable, and access to technology was limited. However, the team was determined to find solutions. They worked with local governments, NGOs, and tech companies to improve infrastructure, ensuring that even the most remote schools could access the platform. At the same time, they began localizing content to meet the specific needs of different countries. In places like India, where English was not the primary language, they worked with educators to create content in local languages. They also adapted lessons to align with local curricula, ensuring that the platform wasn't just a tool, but a valuable resource for teachers and students. Despite all the progress, there were still moments of doubt. Every time Ethan returned from a trip, he would find himself staring at the platform's analytics, wondering if they were doing enough. The pressure to keep expanding, to keep innovating, weighed heavily on him. But each time, he reminded himself of the people they were helping, the children who were learning, the parents who were supporting their children, and the educators who were seeing their classrooms transformed. Back home, the team worked tirelessly to ensure the platform's success in every new market. They hired local teams to manage regional partnerships, working closely with grassroots organizations to get the platform into as many hands as possible. They also implemented feedback loops, ensuring that they were always adapting to the unique needs of each community. Through it all, the team never lost sight of what had made their platform successful in the first place: their commitment to safety, empathy, and accessibility. It wasn't about competing with other tech giants. It was about making a real difference in the world. One evening, as Ethan sat at his desk, reading through the latest round of feedback from their international partners, a notification popped up on his phone. It was a message from Grace Wells. "We've been getting incredible feedback from the communities you've impacted. Your platform is changing lives, and we're seeing the ripple effect in every region you've touched. But I have something exciting to share. A major international education summit is coming up, and they've invited you to speak. They want to hear from the team who's truly making a difference in the world of education." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The opportunity to speak at such a prestigious event was the kind of recognition they had never sought, but it felt like a validation of everything they had worked for. The platform had started as a small idea, and now it was being recognized on the world stage. After a brief discussion with the team, they decided to take the opportunity. They were ready to tell their story, not just to educators and tech leaders, but to the world. They had come a long way, and it was time to show everyone what they had built. In preparation for the summit, the team worked around the clock. They refined their message, rehearsed their presentation, and made sure they were ready to share their journey. They didn't just want to present the success of their platform, they wanted to tell the story of how they had stayed true to their mission, even when the odds were stacked against them. The day of the summit arrived, and the team found themselves standing in front of an audience of thousands. The atmosphere was electric, and the eyes of the educational world were on them. Ethan stepped up to the podium, his heart pounding in his chest, but his mind clear. He began by sharing the story of how they had started, how a small group of people had come together to create something that was about more than just profits and technology. It was about changing the world, one student at a time. He spoke of the communities they had reached, of the lives they had touched, and of the partnerships they had formed. He shared the challenges they had faced, losing investors, dealing with competition, and navigating the complexities of international expansion. But through it all, he said, the one thing that had kept them going was their commitment to making education accessible, safe, and empowering for every child, no matter where they lived. As he finished, the audience erupted into applause. Ethan looked out at the sea of faces, each one representing a different part of the world, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had come a long way, and there was still so much to do. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like they were on the right path. The road ahead was long, and the challenges would continue to come. But Ethan knew one thing for certain. They weren't just building a platform, they were building a future. Image prompt, 16.9 format. A large international education summit, with Ethan speaking on stage in front of a captivated audience of educators, policymakers, and tech innovators. The backdrop features a large screen displaying the platform's logo and statistics. The atmosphere is inspiring, filled with hope and possibility, as Ethan passionately shares the platform's journey and impact. The audience's faces reflect admiration and excitement for the future of education. The days following the loss of their investor were tough. Despite the initial shock, Ethan, Maya, and Sophia found themselves more resolute than ever. The decision to push forward without the backing of their former investor was, in many ways, a turning point for the team. They had learned to rely on each other and the communities they served, rather than external sources of validation. And with that, they began to make their most daring move yet, expanding internationally. The partnership with Grace Wells' nonprofit organization had opened up new doors. The team started working together to identify regions across the globe where their platform could make a significant impact. While many international markets posed their own set of challenges, cultural differences, language barriers, varying educational systems, the platform's adaptable design made it the perfect tool for bridging these gaps. Ethan found himself constantly on the move, traveling to countries he had once only read about in textbooks. He visited schools in South America, met with nonprofit leaders in Southeast Asia, and spoke with educators in Africa. Every place he went, he saw the same thing: the undeniable need for accessible, safe, and effective educational resources. One morning, Ethan stood in front of a small rural classroom in Kenya, watching as a group of children sat eagerly in front of a computer, interacting with the platform. The classroom, while humble, was filled with an energy that was hard to ignore. Children who had once been relegated to outdated textbooks and overcrowded classrooms were now interacting with content tailored to their needs. The teacher, a woman named Amina, turned to Ethan with a smile. "We used to have no resources. Now, thanks to your platform, these children have the world at their fingertips. They are learning faster, and they are more excited than I've ever seen." Ethan's heart swelled with pride. This was the kind of impact he had dreamed of when they first started. It wasn't just about the technology. It was about giving these children the tools they needed to succeed. The expansion into international markets wasn't without its challenges, though. In many regions, internet connectivity was unreliable, and access to technology was limited. However, The team was determined to find solutions. They worked with local governments, NGOs, and tech companies to improve infrastructure, ensuring that even the most remote schools could access the platform. At the same time, they began localizing content to meet the specific needs of different countries. In places like India, where English was not the primary language, they worked with educators to create content in local languages. They also adapted lessons to align with local curricula, ensuring that the platform wasn't just a tool, but a valuable resource for teachers and students. Despite all the progress, there were still moments of doubt. Every time Ethan returned from a trip, he would find himself staring at the platform's analytics, wondering if they were doing enough. The pressure to keep expanding, to keep innovating, weighed heavily on him. But each time, he reminded himself of the people they were helping, the children who were learning, the parents who were supporting their children, and the educators who were seeing their classrooms transformed. Back home, the team worked tirelessly to ensure the platform's success in every new market. They hired local teams to manage regional partnerships, working closely with grassroots organizations to get the platform into as many hands as possible. They also implemented feedback loops, ensuring that they were always adapting to the unique needs of each community. Through it all, the team never lost sight of what had made their platform successful in the first place: their commitment to safety, empathy, and accessibility. It wasn't about competing with other tech giants. It was about making a real difference in the world. One evening, as Ethan sat at his desk, reading through the latest round of feedback from their international partners, a notification popped up on his phone. It was a message from Grace Wells. "We've been getting incredible feedback from the communities you've impacted. Your platform is changing lives, and we're seeing the ripple effect in every region you've touched. But I have something exciting to share. A major international education summit is coming up, and they've invited you to speak. They want to hear from the team who's truly making a difference in the world of education." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The opportunity to speak at such a prestigious event was the kind of recognition they had never sought, but it felt like a validation of everything they had worked for. The platform had started as a small idea, and now it was being recognized on the world stage. After a brief discussion with the team, they decided to take the opportunity. They were ready to tell their story, not just to educators and tech leaders, but to the world. They had come a long way, and it was time to show everyone what they had built. In preparation for the summit, the team worked around the clock. They refined their message, rehearsed their presentation, and made sure they were ready to share their journey. They didn't just want to present the success of their platform. They wanted to tell the story of how they had stayed true to their mission, even when the odds were stacked against them. The day of the summit arrived, and the team found themselves standing in front of an audience of thousands. The atmosphere was electric, and the eyes of the educational world were on them. Ethan stepped up to the podium, his heart pounding in his chest, but his mind clear. He began by sharing the story of how they had started, how a small group of people had come together to create something that was about more than just profits and technology. It was about changing the world, one student at a time. He spoke of the communities they had reached, of the lives they had touched, and of the partnerships they had formed. He shared the challenges they had faced: losing investors, dealing with competition, and navigating the complexities of international expansion. But through it all, he said, the one thing that had kept them going was their commitment to making education accessible, safe, and empowering for every child, no matter where they lived. As he finished, the audience erupted into applause. Ethan looked out at the sea of faces, each one representing a different part of the world, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had come a long way, and there was still so much to do. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like they were on the right path. The road ahead was long, and the challenges would continue to come. But Ethan knew one thing for certain. They weren't just building a platform, they were building a future. The International Education Summit had been a success beyond their expectations. The applause and the positive feedback from the audience had been overwhelming, but it was the connections made at the summit that truly marked a new chapter in their journey. Ethan, Maya, Sophia, and the rest of the team were inundated with invitations to collaborate with education systems, government officials, and global nonprofits. It seemed as though the world was finally beginning to take notice of the difference they were making. However, with every new opportunity came new responsibilities. The team was now navigating a complex network of partnerships, each with its own set of challenges. In some cases, they had to negotiate deals with government agencies that were unfamiliar with the platform's goals. In others, they were working with international nonprofits that had different approaches to education, which sometimes led to tensions and disagreements over how to best implement the platform in their respective regions. Despite these obstacles, the team remained committed to their mission. They understood that unity would be their greatest strength. By pooling resources, ideas, and expertise, they could continue to grow and spread their impact. But unity, they learned, wasn't always easy. It took trust, patience, and constant communication. One particular partnership stood out as both a challenge and an opportunity: a collaboration with a large nonprofit organization based in the Middle East. The organization, known for its work in providing educational resources to refugee children, had reached out to the team with an ambitious proposal. They wanted to implement the platform in refugee camps across the region, where children had little to no access to formal education. Ethan and Maya traveled to the Middle East to meet with the nonprofit's leadership. They were greeted by a team of passionate individuals who had dedicated their lives to improving the lives of displaced children. The nonprofit had already set up a network of schools and community centers in the refugee camps, but they faced significant challenges. Lack of funding, limited access to technology, and the ongoing instability of the region had made it difficult to provide quality education to the children who needed it most. The idea of bringing the platform to these children filled Ethan with both excitement and anxiety. On the one hand, this was exactly the type of work the platform was built for, providing education to those who had been marginalized and forgotten. On the other hand, the reality of implementing the platform in such a challenging environment was daunting. The team would have to overcome obstacles they had never faced before, including working with limited internet access, inadequate infrastructure, and security concerns. When Ethan and Maya sat down with the nonprofit's leadership to discuss the details, it quickly became clear that there was a mutual understanding of the challenges they would face. However, they were also united by a common goal: to provide education and hope to children who had lost everything. "We understand the difficulties," said Samir, the nonprofit's director, "but we believe that education is the key to rebuilding lives. And this platform, you've created something that can give these children a future. We want to be part of this." Maya looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with determination. "We're ready to take on whatever it takes, but we need to ensure that we do this the right way. It's not just about delivering content, it's about building a community that supports these children." The team quickly got to work, organizing resources and planning the logistics. They knew they couldn't do this alone, so they reached out to their network of partners, local educators, and technology providers to help make the project a reality. Together, they formed a coalition of organizations committed to bringing the platform to the refugee camps. The process wasn't easy. The team faced countless setbacks along the way. Power outages, limited bandwidth, and political instability made it difficult to maintain a consistent connection. But through it all, they found ways to adapt. They worked with local organizations to provide offline access to the platform, using preloaded content and solar-powered devices to ensure that the children could still access educational materials even when the internet was down. In the weeks that followed, the results began to speak for themselves. Children who had never set foot in a classroom were suddenly engaging with lessons. Teachers who had been overwhelmed with the task of educating large groups with minimal resources were able to use the platform to tailor their lessons to each child's individual needs. Parents, too, began to notice the positive changes in their children. They saw them excited to learn, to explore, and to dream. One day, Maya received a message from Samir. "You should come to see the children," it said. "They've made a video to thank you and your team. You won't believe how much they've learned." Maya and Ethan made the trip to the refugee camp, where they were greeted by dozens of children, their faces beaming with pride. The children had created a short video in which they shared their gratitude for the opportunity to learn. They spoke about how the platform had opened their eyes to new possibilities, and how they were now dreaming of becoming doctors, engineers, and teachers, careers they had never imagined before. As Ethan watched the video, tears welled up in his eyes. This was the moment they had been working for. This was the impact they had always dreamed of. The platform wasn't just a tool for learning, it was a lifeline, a way to help these children rebuild their futures. That evening, as Maya and Ethan sat on the roof of a local guest house overlooking the bustling city below, they reflected on the journey they had taken. "We've come a long way," Maya said softly. "And we've made a difference, but we have so much more to do." Ethan nodded, a sense of calm settling over him. "This is just the beginning. Together we've built something that has the power to change the world." They didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. They would continue to move forward, united by their mission, and by the belief that education was the key to a better future. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the refugee camp, the team reflected on their recent achievements. The video created by the children, expressing their gratitude and excitement for the opportunities they now had gone viral among the organization's network and beyond. It was a powerful reminder of the impact they were making, not just in one camp, but in communities across the world. Ethan had always believed in the power of education to transform lives, but seeing it firsthand in the refugee camps gave him a renewed sense of purpose. For many of these children, education was not just a means of intellectual growth. It was a chance to escape the cycle of poverty, displacement, and despair. And the platform, which had once been just an idea, had become the vehicle through which these children could begin to rebuild their futures. Despite the overwhelming success, the team knew that their work was far from over. The refugee camp, while a shining example of what could be achieved, was only one of many. Across the globe, millions of children faced similar challenges: lack of access to quality education, instability, and uncertainty about the future. The need was immense and the stakes were high. To ensure their platform's impact could continue to grow, Ethan and the team began considering new ways to expand their reach. They realized that in order to truly create lasting change, they needed to work alongside governments, corporations, and local organizations to address the systemic issues that prevented children from accessing education in the first place. Their mission was no longer just about providing content. It was about changing the way the world thought about education for all. "We can't do this alone," Ethan said one evening during a team meeting. "If we want to make lasting change, we need to build more partnerships. We need to ensure that we're not just a temporary solution, but a long-term catalyst for change." Maya, ever the strategist, nodded. "We've already established a strong foundation with nonprofits and local communities. But if we want to scale, we need to secure larger partnerships. We need governments on board, and we need to prove that this isn't just a tech project. It's an essential tool for creating a better future." Sophia, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "What if we start working with international aid organizations and education ministries to integrate our platform into their programs? That way, it's not just a standalone solution. It becomes part of the broader effort to improve education globally." It was an ambitious plan, but one that made sense. They had already proven that their platform could change lives in refugee camps, but to truly reach millions of children in need, they would need to integrate their work with larger systems. The key would be showing governments and international organizations that their platform was not just another piece of technology. It was a necessary part of the global solution to education inequality. Ethan and Maya traveled to Geneva, where they met with representatives from UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. The meeting was tense at first, The room was filled with high-ranking officials, each with their own ideas about how to solve the global education crisis. But as Ethan and Maya presented their platform, the room began to change. "This isn't just about technology," Maya said, her voice steady but filled with passion. "This is about creating a sustainable, scalable system that can be adapted to any community, regardless of resources or infrastructure. We're not here to replace teachers. We're here to empower them, and we're here to give children a chance." One of the UNESCO officials, a woman named Dr. Helena Dubois, listened intently before asking, "But how do you ensure that this works in every country? What about cultural differences, language barriers, and political instability?" Ethan took a deep breath. "We've already faced these challenges. In refugee camps, we've localized content to fit different languages and cultural contexts. We've worked with local teachers and communities to make sure that the platform is relevant and accessible. We've learned that no two communities are the same, but that's exactly why this platform is so adaptable. It doesn't impose a one-size-fits-all solution. It evolves with the needs of the community." Dr. Dubois seemed to consider this for a moment before nodding. "I see. You're not just providing an educational tool. You're providing a framework for innovation in education." The conversation continued late into the evening, and by the end of the meeting, Dr. Dubois offered them a partnership. UNESCO would help facilitate the platform's integration into national education systems around the world, starting with a pilot program in several countries in sub-Saharan Africa. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for, a chance to scale their platform beyond what they had ever imagined. Back at the office, the team celebrated the news. This partnership with UNESCO was a game changer. It meant that their platform would not just be a tool for a few communities. It would become a global resource, recognized and supported by some of the world's most influential educational organizations. But with this new opportunity came new challenges. The pilot program in sub-Saharan Africa would require a significant amount of resources, training local educators, adapting content to local contexts, and ensuring that the technology was accessible even in the most remote areas. But the team was determined to make it work. As the weeks passed, the team worked relentlessly to prepare for the launch. They traveled to the pilot countries, meeting with education ministers and local teachers to ensure that the platform would be implemented successfully. The excitement in the communities they visited was palpable. Teachers were eager to see how the platform could enhance their lessons, and students were excited about the opportunity to learn in a way that was new and engaging. When the first schools began using the platform, the results were immediate. Teachers reported increased engagement from students, many of whom had struggled in traditional classrooms. The platform's interactive lessons allowed students to learn at their own pace, with personalized feedback that helped them understand difficult concepts. In one school, a student who had been unable to read just months before was now reading at a grade level above his peers, thanks to the platform's adaptive learning technology. The news of these successes spread quickly. Local media outlets began reporting on the program, and soon other countries expressed interest in implementing the platform. The momentum was building, and the team was ready to ride it. However, as the pilot program expanded, so did the pressure. Ethan often found himself juggling countless meetings, conference calls, and emails, trying to keep everything on track. Maya and Sophia worked tirelessly to ensure that the platform's technical infrastructure could handle the increased demand, while the rest of the team focused on training and support. Late one night, after a particularly exhausting day, Ethan sat alone in his office, staring out the window at the city lights. He felt a sense of pride in how far they had come, but he also knew that the real work was just beginning. The future of the platform depended on their ability to sustain the momentum they had built, to continue innovating and adapting to the ever-changing landscape of global education. And then, in that quiet moment, he felt a renewed sense of clarity. He knew that no matter how challenging the road ahead would be, he wasn't alone. The team was with him, and together they were changing the world.